Well, it's happened, folks. There is an emulator, an official emulator, well, I mean unofficial emulator, whatever, for Nintendo Switch. That's right, it's finally happened. An emulator has released publicly for Switch. Get ready to load up those ROMs, and, well, okay, you can't actually do that yet. So I got all this information off Reset Era, but it actually is just a summation of information that comes from the people who have now released a Nintendo Switch emulator publicly. So I'm just going to read verbatim what's going on here, so you guys have a full understanding of what is happening. So Yuzu is a work-in-progress Nintendo Switch emulator. Yuzu is an open-source project licensed under the GPL version 2 or later version. Yuzu has been designed with portability in mind, with builds available for Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. The project was started in spring of 2017 by Bunny, one of the original authors of the popular Citra 3DS emulator, to experiment with and research the Nintendo Switch. Due to the similarities between Switch and 3DS, Yuzu was developed as a fork of Citra. This means that it uses the same project architecture, and both emulators benefit from shared improvements. And here's a little FAQ on it. Can I play Switch games? No, not at this time. Yuzu does not currently run any commercial Switch games. Yuzu can boot some games to varying degrees of success, but does not implement any of the necessary GPU features to render 3D graphics. Will Yuzu run games? In short, we do not know how soon games might run. While Yuzu is making great progress, Switch emulation is very complex. Running games is one of the team's top priorities, so we're actively working toward that goal. Where does the name come from? Citra, Junos, or Yuzu. It's a Japanese. It's a citrus fruit, most commonly used in Asian cuisines. The name was chosen as a homage to Citra and its developers, whose work gave foundation for this project. And essentially what you can do with this, it's more so for homebrew and other things like that. Like you can actually use this to develop games for homebrew that can now currently be launched on Switch through certain methods. We talked about this before. Our Switch has been hacked. There's a hack that works with version 3.0.0. Then we have another company claiming that through a hardware edition that they can work around the entire Switch OS, which will then allow you to load homebrew in. And if you're making games on homebrew or you're doing anything else on homebrew, you can bring that stuff over and you could do this through this emulator that is now publicly released. I'll have links to the emulator down in the description because I'm not going to tell you not to use it. I know I'm against emulation in general, emulating like commercial games, especially if you didn't buy the game. But it is what it is. My stance notwithstanding, I'm not going to tell you not to go check it out and try it out because maybe you have some other legit things you would like to do. This emulator is not illegal. It's not against the law. So it'll be interesting to see what people do in homebrew and whatever else with this emulator being public. But again, setting that aside that I don't care what you're going to do with it, it's still interesting because obviously emulators, the #1 reason people download emulators is to play games. So for most of you guys, the fact that this emulator cannot play Switch games natively yet is going to, don't pick it up yet, right? But it's there. They've been working on it since the beginning of 2017. I bet you by the end of this year, this emulator will be able to run a significant chunk of commercial Switch games. I mean, that's kind of a big deal. I mean, here's the thing. I'm not really all up in this emulation community, so I'm not going to sit here and chastise you if you're someone that emulates games. I'm not going to chastise you if you're someone against emulation, but it's going to be happening sooner than later, folks. Switch games are going to be able to be emulated on PCs everywhere, on Macs everywhere, on Linux systems everywhere. It's going to happen. The ROMs have been leaking for quite some time. There are various ROMs of Switch games already out there. We just can't do anything but do dumps of them, so you can get text dumps, or some people have even been able to pull out certain graphical objects, but we haven't really been able to do much else. This is going to enable us to do more with those ROMs and then eventually allow you to just play them. And that's going to be interesting. We're going to start seeing Super Mario Odyssey in 4K. That's one of the cool things you can do with emulation. Just like we've seen Breath of the Wild because there's a Wii U emulator. It's actually surprising it's not built on the back of the Wii U emulators. It's built on the back of Citra. But apparently there's some architecture similarities between the 3DS and Switch, so that's why they went that route. It's just really interesting. I'm not really sure what to think, because I'm so against emulation on the whole that I kind of don't want this to exist. But then there's also the enthusiast side of me. It's like, but look at all the other cool things you can do. I mean, Super Mario Odyssey in 4K, changing out graphical elements in certain games, creating mods for games. There's a lot of really great things you can do that currently is really only supposed to be done with PC games, but emulators allow us to do that with console games as well. So it's going to be really interesting just to see the possibilities of these Switch games if they were on PCs, I guess, is kind of what I enjoy most out of the emulator and ROM community. Anyways, folks, let me know what you think about this Yuzu emulator situation down in the comments below. I'm really interested in what you guys feel about this, because I'm completely conflicted. I'm always conflicted when it comes to emulation, because I think there's so much cool stuff you can do with it, but at the same point, a lot of people are going to use this to play games illegally that they never purchased, and I have an issue with that. Some of you guys might not have an issue with that. This is going to be a fun conversation this year talking about Switch emulation, because we're almost there. Anyways, folks, I am Nathaniel Rufflegans from Nintendo Prime, and if you like this video, you know what to do, and if you dislike the video, hit that dislike button, subscribe for more content, and I want to remind everyone that starting tomorrow, Tuesday at noon, we are going to have our first ever live news show, so check it out, and if you happen to miss it, no worries. The show, after we're done streaming it, will go up on the channel whenever YouTube is done uploading it and doing all the whatever things they do with the uploads on the live streams. I usually ends up taking like an hour after a show for it to go up. Alright, that's it. I'm done. Stay tuned, because Prime things are happening.